This is just video update for the neck making part of the Stick Dulcimer series. Over the years I've simplified the construction so that we only need to take a rebate out of the sides and not the top. This simplifies the setting of the angle, and it also means that you can work from the datum here without any loss of accuracy. There are several ways of making this section here to size. Once we have our sides, we know how thick these are going to be. On my original series, I showed how to do this on a bandsaw and also on the pillar drill. Today I'm going to show you how to do this on a router table. To create the neck from a sawn piece of timber, this is a 2-inch square piece of timber. So with your neck, you're aiming ideally to have grain that's as quarter sawn as you can, or even if it's just off the center, so where the grain is the straightest. So we're going to plane the face side here. This datum is the side that we're going to work from and that we'll use to measure the other pieces. So we're going to plane this flush on the surface planer. So we're going to attach the fretboard material temporarily so we can put those through the planer at the same time. We want to plane this down to 26 millimeters. The main thing is to get it close to 26 millimeters without chipping out the wood. This wood should plane well. This is Chiselling Preto, which plays nicely. Some fingerboard boards are far more chippy. So we take some decorator's tape. A couple of drops of super glue. Position the fretboard on the bottom edge. And it's a question of holding it there for 10 or 15 seconds. Okay, so that's something that we can put through the thicknesser and plane. We'll set that aside for 1 minute, we'll do the other one. Just 0.5 millimeters to spare, which is good. That's plenty for sanding. Okay, so I've just taped some tracing paper over the plans. You can just measure and mark on the neck, of course, but this is just a quick way. Bit of tracing paper. We're just trying to trace on the profile. This is only rough because as we build the neck, we'll adjust most of these. And you want to be the reverse the tracing paper. We'll mark up this on and then we'll double check with the measurements. Mahogany started to see a pencil line. So I'm going to saw, then sand off this part. I don't usually thickness the neck just yet until after, but we are just going to bandsaw the neck out. And we are going to leave this extra length at the moment until we've routed or sawn the grooves for the sides. Now before we continue, what we're going to do is to mark on the centre line. This centre line is the one that's going to correspond to the centre line in the building board, here and here. So this positions the neck perfectly on the centre line, and that ensures that when we do the bottom block on the centre line as well, that will all line up nicely with the sides. You take your marking gauge, rather than just measuring it, what we do is mark on a line that's slightly over the center line, turn it around, go back to the same spot, mark on a line that's just over the center line, 2 lines here now. What we do is we now take our gauge, position it dead in the center of these 2 lines. And then once we're sure that we've got a center line, we can double check one side, turn it around, check those sides. It should go fit in the same groove. Okay, and make sure this is tight and it's not going to move. It's worth double checking this particular, this is where the whole instrument depends on the center line. Okay, so now we've got the shallow line, just to be sure, then we'll do it from both sides. This gives us a nice crisp line to work from. It's not terribly visible, probably in the light here. Just sharpen the pencil. With a sharp pencil, you can just make sure the line that's visible. You can also go this over with your knife. This gives you a nice, good center line to work from. So we're not going to trim this waist until after we've done the recesses for the neck. On this particular instrument, it's 3mm we need to take off from either side. Just going to mark on roughly where the neck joins the body. Let's say that the slight angle will change it by 1mm or so, but the discrepancy will be taken up by a piece of binding later, so we don't worry too much about the slight gap at this point. Use the face to mark the lines. So what we need to do now is to make the recess 3mm here and 3mm here. Now we will use the marking gauge for this, so we are going to measure 3mm on our vernier caliper. So if you take your caliper, reset it to 0, use the bottom part here. This bottom section protrudes the exact amount, so we're just going to take this 3mm. Okay. 3mm, and then we use that to set. Again, this is something I'd probably double check. What I'd recommend doing is taking a piece of scrap wood and just double checking that you've got it. So, this is, okay, just double check. Just double check you've got the right amount for the ribs. I say each set of ribs that are glued up may be slightly different, maybe 2.8, 3.2, whatever. You just need to make sure that they're going to fit your ribs. It should be a snug fit. You can sand it if it's not. There's several ways to glue the head plate on. I'm just using a single 2mm veneer on this case. This is ebony. I've got some 3D printed clamps. I'm just check the size. You can use any clamps you like. You have to be careful it doesn't slip though. It's not so bad with a small headstock like this. This piece of wood is just plain, just slightly wider, just to give me a bit of extra room. And we're just going over, just slightly over the lines here, so that we've got some room to sand this flush. So we're going to apply the glue. So we use tight bond in this example. And gluing up a single veneer is a lot easier than doing multiple layers. So I've already labelled on here top and bottom, so I know which way is up. And the position is just slightly over the edge of this. Apply the first clamp just to hold it in position. Okay, once I can see that it's slightly proud over the edge, both edges, and I can continue to glue up the rest. I'm just alternating the clamps just to get a bit of extra assurance that it's glued up nicely. Just checking there's some squeeze out on either side. Which I think what I can do is I'm just going to add one extra clamp. I'll just leave that. I'm probably going to leave that overnight to dry. We'll come back and then trim it to the edge. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use a flush cutting saw to level the section of the nut. This means that the nut will be able to sit on a flat section of wood. You can also just cut a piece out and the nut will then fit into the groove between the head plate and the fingerboard. It's just two different ways of doing it, but if you leave the head plate on, bear in mind that that adds an extra like 2 millimeters to the depth. So you might need to adjust the step on the building board. We will sand and plane this later on. So with the headplate is glued. Before we do that, we are going to fit the body. So we use our face as a datum. Now those pencil lines that we marked on earlier, we're now going to mark on with the marking knife using the face edge. We're just taking the knife line all the way around so that everything matches up and everything is equal. This is a single bevel marking knife. That way we can hold the flat edge against the square. Just scratching a small line. This is going to be the line that we use to saw cut. Bear in mind that this will be covered by a piece of binding strip at the very end, most likely. In this next piece, we're going to be taking 3mm from either side. Again, we're just going to mark the end here with a knife line. Just so we know where we're out in between. Okay, so we have our knife lines going around there. Now we're going to use the router method on this neck instead of the bandsaw. Again, on my original video I demonstrated using the drill press to take out the 3mm sides. And this will also work with this method. Basically we're just using the router to do the work of the Forstner bit. So we're going to remove most of this waste here. We'll make a relief saw cut on both ends. Now we've left quite a bit of waste here, like 2 inches at the end. Now that's good because that gives us ability to hold the piece of wood securely and keep the router bit away from our fingers. First thing we're going to do is we'll just use our saw. We're just going to make a 2mm relief cut using our saw. And the saw cut doesn't need to be pretty. All this is doing is providing some Now you don't want to go deeper than 3mm if you can help it. Kind of do. I've gone about 4mm in. It's just slightly over the depth. That's fine. A bit more on that side. Okay, so what we need to do now, we've already measured the thickness of the ribs, and we're going to set the router to this depth. At the moment it's just slightly proud, so we're going to have to lower it just a tiny bit. And this is where this is where a fine tuner can help if you've got a fine tuner on your router. Obviously it's better to okay. Okay, we've got to go. There's still some light sanding to do here, but this will ensure that a good fit is made.